Europa Universalis IV is on its way, and its release will herald the end of an era, one that has impacted me greatly. It's time to reflect on Europa Universalis IV. This is not a retrospective, it's not a systematic synopsis of systems and judgments on game design, but instead it's an introspective way for me to express my own history with a game that I struggled with. This is very self-indulgent and more of a therapeutic exercise than something made for all, but hopefully it will provide some insights and advice, and I hope that that's useful for all of us. My attraction to Europa Universalis IV is not its myriad of systems or its dense historical content, but its ability to tell stories. The complexities and nuances of the game mechanics are primarily made to try and replicate as realistic a representation of history, at least somewhat. Many people love to deep dive into intricacies of these mechanics and explore and exploit them and blob all over the world, but for me the appeal of these mechanics are actually quite different. It actually gave us a wonderful ability for this game to create a narrative that is unique to every playthrough. To me, the mechanics serve more as a catalyst for the feeling of taking charge of an evolving nation in a messy post-feudal world that is about to change greatly. Most people who've glanced towards this type of game would have found the Civilization games, and they do, on the whole, do a good job of conveying this adaptive storytelling feeling. But the more you embed a game into history and create rich mechanics that explore the geopolitics, the more real the realism gets. Europa Universalis IV presents us with this challenge to engage with emerging global trade and the people or factions throughout the world, making the sandbox you play within much more concrete. You're essentially creating your own alternative history, with the future historians and Wikipedia pages representing how your nation was able to navigate through this changing world. No nation is the same as well, as it's far more viable for France to dominate the continent than, say, the German city-state of Ulm. This adds a level of realism, but also a level of replayability that few games can achieve, even if completing a game takes nearly 30 plus hours. This also has the byproduct of creating a natural difficulty setting, with those wanting more of a challenge picking more challenging starts. EU4, as it's called, does have a difficulty setting, but it does what other bad strategy games with this, and it just hands the AI buffs. But the game doesn't actually need this difficulty setting due to the different nations you can play and the difficulties that are inherent within them. There are of course some things that aren't perfect. Many players stop a campaign around the 1650 date as the game starts to get a teeny bit repetitive. Many playthroughs that feel divergent at first start to become increasingly familiar if you've played in that region before, and actions you make to tip the scale in your fortune start to become a bit more tedious. But even if the game ended there, I would have felt that I've made most of this game. There is also the issue of DLC. There are far too many to name, and while you can play the game without them, it feels very hollow, and some DLCs, such as the Rights of Man, feel essential. The devs have got to the point where they can't possibly make the game balanced for every possible combination of DLC, that you will feel left out when the game updates if you aren't up to date. It's made playing EU4 for over a decade still feel new and exciting, but it also made it bloody expensive, and it felt well overdue to start again. And having Europa Universalis V coming out gives a uniform platform to all. So why, for a game that I'm kind of fawning over, do I have such a difficult relationship with it? The answer is game addiction. Well, can you really be addicted to gaming? Is it really a negative thing? Certainly games aren't inherently either addictive or negative. They aren't full of addictive substances that release through our keyboards when we play them, and they don't cause first order harm. They don't reach out and scratch you when you play, but the gaming community can understandably be very defensive when we encounter reasons why gaming can be harmful and even be demonstrably bad for someone's health. Throughout the early inception of gaming culture, and even to this day, parents and politicians blamed gaming for the problems of the time. This was stupid. Widespread Mario use does not make you a bad person. However, this doesn't mean that there can't be too much of a good thing, and it doesn't mean that, like everything else, games can't be abused and feed our worst habit. For me, Europa Universalis IV was the main expression of a deep-seated mental issue, a game that I would play continuously to a point of addiction, and to a point that caused me severe harm. I don't blame the game for this. It was a symptom of an illness that then was reinforced by it, and if it wasn't for this game, it would be another or something outside of gaming completely. But for me, it was EU4. Most people may imagine someone complaining about playing too much of a game to be a mirror of the World of Warcraft South Park guy, and while I might not be the fittest man in the world, the issues of my addiction were not the same as this kind of betrayal. They could actually be seen as far more harmful. I told you of the reasons I was enticed by EU4, about the great stories you could tell as you weave tapestries with it as your canvas, but most of the time I spent with the game was with me just going through the motions, as if I was just a passenger to my body's actions. I was zoned out, zombie-like and unengaged yet transfixed. It was something I could do and separate my mind from my body almost. We all experience this from time to time, and phone games especially prey on this, but due to my own issues I found it hard to resist, and for a time it definitely took over. Some call it a form of executive dysfunction, but you shouldn't use this video or any of my ramblings as any sort of medical advice, but it does help me illustrate what was kind of going on. I would play this game not really focusing on it, but also not focusing on anything else. I would know that maybe I should do something important, but that voice often felt far away and not able to pierce through and take charge, and I wouldn't stop playing. Then this created issues and made me feel worse, feeding this cycle of a need to be zombie-like to escape the issues that I had to deal with. One day in winter, my wife came home to see me playing this game. I hadn't dressed, eaten or drank any water, and I was freezing to touch. I knew that I needed to do all these things, but I just couldn't do it on my own. I was seriously unwell. I call some of my time playing EU4 an addiction due to the fact it became not what I wanted to do, but something that I felt that I had to do. Sometimes loading it up and staring at the screen was as necessary as drinking. I did it without thinking. I didn't feel in control of my actions, that I didn't have any thoughts, and I just floated in a daze towards the computer. On days where I did have thoughts about it, they were becoming more negative and hard to fight. This wasn't a quirk, but a form of serious obsessive compulsive disorder, and that isn't a small thing where you're a bit neat. The words are quite extreme: obsessive, compulsive. My issue was not that I was playing EU4, it was that I couldn't stop, even when I knew I wanted to. Gaming is not the issue, but sometimes our relationship with gaming does need to be checked. It is not the only game that has that effect on me, but the one where I experienced it the most. But I see less extreme versions of this zombie-like behaviour everywhere, especially with repetitive phone games. Many of these games are designed to keep you hooked, and I don't believe that Europa Universalis IV is in the same boat, but it does have a feature that makes it easy to binge away at. There's no obvious jumping off point. The enjoyment of games that allow you to develop your own fun is that they also don't segment the game into sections. You're not forced to evaluate yourself at any point while playing. Just one more turn is a term that I've used and is familiar to those who've played games like Civilization, and in EU4 for me it was I'll maybe finish this war and I'll get off. But the expansive nature of these games makes it hard for any one event to feel truly significant to end on, as the next chapter of the story has already likely started bleeding its way in before the end of the last. This isn't a negative. The lack of jumping off points for these games are down to their wide-ranging mechanics, all interfering and pulling you in different directions. It's actually a byproduct of great design rather than the intent, as is the case with many phone games. But despite the intentions, to those like me who struggle with these mental health issues, it doesn't make it easy. This doesn't mean I need to be a passenger in my own health, however, and understanding this complicated relationship I have with games that I love, such as Europa Universalis IV, means that I can take steps to enjoy playing them again. I've listed a series of points that have helped myself, but hopefully might be able to help you if you suffer from a very similar kind of thing. Number 1, see a professional. What has helped me more than any of the tips I'll list below was seeing doctors and seeking proper help. I had a working understanding of my issues, and self-diagnosis can be helpful, but working hard in therapy, challenging myself, listening to hard advice and taking regular prescribed medication means I'm able to impose better practices on myself to overcome the depressional spikes that I had. Number 2, play with purpose. If you're playing for the purpose of enjoying a game, make sure you enjoy it. You don't have to be an achievement hunter or speedrunner to have a purpose. I even have achievements turned off because I don't care for them. But I do set myself a rough goal of what I want to try when I sit down. It can be quite specific, such as I'm going to convert Europe to Hussitism, or very broad, such as I'm going to try and establish my small state in this region. By having that purpose, it's much more easy to evaluate your goals and your playthrough and check in with yourself to see that you are still enjoying yourself. 3, set alarms. Some games and apps have reminders built in, and they never used to work for me, and they still kind of don't. I now know the reason for this though. You need agency in setting up these reminders. You need to choose to ask yourself if you need a break, if you need to do something else like go for a walk or go have some water. More than anything, you need to ask, are you still having fun? If you're not the one who sets these reminders and questions up, then you aren't likely to respond to them. Instead, it becomes just another easily dismissible pop-up. I used to think that setting alarms would make my experience worse by interrupting me, but actually, I enjoy my time better because the times that I am spending on the game is much more pleasurable. Number 4, be strict. This is the hardest part, and it stems from confronting the reason you're likely stuck. If you're stuck because you're having a great time, then this ain't a big deal but if you're stuck on your screen and really don't want to come off despite not truly enjoying yourself, then the reason is much more likely down to not wanting to face life off that screen and the vulnerabilities that come with facing the world. But by not facing it, we are not allowing ourselves to truly enjoy the part of the world that should be the most enjoyable, games. I'm glad that I am actually able to enjoy Europa Universalis IV again, and hopefully I'll have a lot less of a complicated relationship with Europa Universalis V.